How did the Northern Crusades, the centuries-long process of military conquest and colonial expansion that fundamentally reshaped the map of Northern Europe, begin to pierce the final redoubt of European paganism? In 1147, the Saxon nobles looked toward the primeval forests of the Elbe rather than the sun-drenched walls of the Levant. This shift turns a vast pagan wedge into a battlefield of ideological transformation and territorial hunger. The cross becomes a tool of expansion as the first knightly levies mobilize for a mission of forced conversion. This initial mobilization established the precedent for missionary warfare and set the entire Baltic frontier on a path of permanent conflict. Why did Bernard of Clairvaux pivot the eyes of Christendom toward the north? The chief ideologist of the movement argues that striking the heathens on the Elbe is as spiritually meritorious as the journey to Jerusalem itself. He demands either conversion or extermination, dehumanizing the Slavic tribes as an evil serpent whose heads must be crushed beneath a mail-clad heel. This rhetoric allows knights to fulfill their sacred vows without leaving the continent, transforming religious piety into a demonstration of political virility. The resulting theological justification provided the legal framework for a crusade that would last for centuries. How did the peaceful mission of the monk Meinhard fail on the banks of the Dvina River in the 1180s? Arriving among the Livonians, the Cistercian missionary attempts to win souls through trade and the construction of stone-walled fortifications at Ixkila. While some locals accept baptism to gain protection against neighboring raids, they ritually wash off the holy water in the river as soon as the missionaries depart. Meinhard watches his influence evaporate as the native tribes prioritize political convenience over spiritual transformation. This failure of peaceful proselytizing convinced the papacy that the Baltic could only be won through the edge of a sword. What drove Bishop Berthold of Hanover to abandon diplomacy for the weight of the spear in 1198? Arriving with a contingent of crusaders, the militant successor to Meinhard seeks to enforce conversion through the threat of immediate violence. During a sharp skirmish shortly after his landing, Berthold is surrounded and killed in battle, becoming a martyr for the expansionist cause. His death prompts Pope Innocent III to issue a formal bull declaring a full-scale crusade to avenge the fallen bishop and protect the fragile mission. This escalation transformed a small missionary outpost into a theater of total war backed by the authority of Rome. How did Bishop Albert von Buxhoven ensure the permanence of the Livonian mission after 1201? He founds the city of Riga as a fortified gateway, inviting Hanseatic merchants to build a robust economic base for the coming wars. To provide a standing defense, he establishes the Livonian Brothers of the Sword, warrior monks who take vows of poverty while sharpening their heavy cavalry lances. These men-at-arms become the iron core of a new social hierarchy designed to subordinate the native peasantry. This establishment of a permanent garrison turned a fragile mission into a sovereign military state. Where did the Estonian tribes find the strength to resist the Sword Brothers during the brutal wars of attrition starting in 1208? Unlike their fragmented neighbors, the Estonian elders coordinate their defenses across 15 counties, sacking Crusader territories and stalling the advance for nearly 2 decades. The conflict shifts in 1219 when King Valdemar II of Denmark lands a massive fleet at Lindenise to expand his own northern empire. During a desperate moment in the battle, a red flag with a white cross falls from the sky, inspiring the Danes to a miraculous victory. This triumph resulted in the founding of Rival and established a Danish choke point on the northern coast. Why did the Teutonic Knights emerge as the dominant power in the Baltic during the early 13th century? Founded in the Holy Land, the Order of the German House of St. Mary seeks a sovereign territory where they can exercise autonomous control away from Mediterranean squabbles. Under the brilliant diplomacy of Grand Master Hermann von Salza, the Order positions itself as the premier military force for the conversion of the East. They possess the logistical reach and European reserves that the struggling Sword Brothers lack. This shift in power brought the most disciplined heavy cavalry in Christendom to the borders of the pagan wilderness. How did Hermann von Salza secure the legal future of the Teutonic Order in 1226? Through masterful mediation between the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope, he obtains the Golden Bull of Rimini, granting the order sovereignty over any lands they conquer from the Prussians. This document transforms the knights from mere mercenaries into masters of an independent state. In 1230, Duke Conrad of Masovia invites the order to defend his borders, unknowingly ceding the Chelmno land to a power that would soon eclipse his own. This diplomatic maneuver turned a defensive invitation into a systematic campaign of colonial expansion. Why did the Teutonic Knights employ a leapfrog strategy of castle construction across the Prussian frontier in 1230? The order invades a tribal territory, defeats the local elite, and immediately raises a wooden motte or palisade to secure the ground before moving deeper. These early fortifications are often built directly upon the ruins of pagan hill forts, physically replacing the old gods with the architecture of conquest. Each new bailey serves as a node for administration and a base for rapid raids into the surrounding marshes. This systematic expansion created a grid of control that the disorganized tribes could not break. How did the Great Prussian Uprising of 1260 threaten to undo decades of Crusader gains? Following a major defeat for the order, the native Prussian tribes unite in a desperate struggle to reclaim their ancestral lands and sacred groves. They besiege the brick-built fortresses and cut off the logistics of the garrisons, nearly pushing the knights back to the Vistula River. The Teutonic Order responds with a brutal war of exhaustion, utilizing their superior access to European reinforcements and siege engines to crush the rebellion. This final defeat marked the end of Prussian independence and the beginning of their total cultural assimilation. How did Master Volkwin find himself trapped in a valley of death on September 22, 1236? The Master of the Sword Brothers is pressured into a raid by arrogant Holstein crusaders who demand a battle despite the encroaching autumn bogs near Saul. As the heavy cavalry returns with plundered livestock, they encounter a determined group of Samogitians blocking a crucial river crossing. The crusaders halt in the marsh, refusing to dismount and risk their expensive horses in the thick mud. This hesitation allowed the pagan light cavalry to surround the baggage train and turn a retreat into a disaster. What weapons did the Samogitians use to dismantle the elite knightly order in the swamp? Hidden in the heights, the pagan infantry hurls javelins before closing the distance with specialized wooden boomen, heavy clubs carved from tree stumps designed to unhorse the riders. The swampy terrain strips the military advantage from the armored knights, leaving them floundering as the light troops strike them down. Master Volkwin dies alongside nearly all his brothers, his formation shattered by the weight of the environment and the fury of the native defense. This total slaughter collapsed the independent power of the Sword Brothers and forced their absorption into the Teutonic Order. Why did the Teutonic Knights advance across the frozen expanse of Lake Peipus on April 5, 1242? Seeking to expand the Northern Crusades into Orthodox Russian territories, the order moves toward the merchant city of Novgorod during the spring thaw. They are met by Prince Alexander Nevsky, who expertly positions his militia and elite Druzhina cavalry at the natural barrier of Raven's Rock. Alexander believes the overconfident knights will commit to a direct charge, so he weakens his center to draw them onto the ice. This strategic retreat lured the heavy cavalry into a terrain where their greatest strength would become their fatal weakness. How did the signature Schweinekopf wedge formation fail the Teutonic Knights during the battle on the ice? The armored knights drive their boar's snout phalanx into the Russian center, expecting a quick rout as they punch through the infantry lines. However, Nevsky's flanks hold firm, and his archers unleash an enfilade of arrows that prevents the wedge from expanding. The knights become entangled in a chaotic melee, unable to maneuver or retreat as the Russian cavalry closes the circle. This lack of mobility turned the disciplined formation into a densely packed target for the lighter, more agile defenders. How did the environment itself become a combatant at the climax of the struggle on Lake Peipus? As the heavily packed armored knights struggle against the slippery surface, the weight of their horses and plate mail proves too much for the thinning spring ice. The sudden terrifying sound of the ice cracking signals the end as the Crusaders begin to disappear into the dark, freezing water. Alexander Nevsky watches as the invincible wedge disintegrates into a frozen graveyard of their own making. This catastrophic failure halted the eastward expansion of the Order and established a permanent religious border across the Baltic. What enabled the Lithuanian tribes to survive the Crusader onslaught that had destroyed their neighbors? In the 1230s, Mindaugas emerges as the highest king, uniting the disparate duchies through a combination of marriage, murder, and military prowess. He recognizes that the primary justification for the Northern Crusades is the pagan threat, so he engages in a brilliant piece of diplomatic theater. In 1251, he accepts Catholic baptism and receives a crown from the Pope, nominally stripping the Teutonic Order of its legal right to attack his lands. This political conversion bought crucial time for the Lithuanian state to centralize its power. How did the Crusades against Lithuania transform into a seasonal ritual known as the Winter Reysa? By the 14th century, these campaigns become a fashionable, noble pilgrimage for Western European aristocrats seeking glory in the Great Wilderness. These expeditions are dictated by the harsh environment, launching only when the bogs and rivers are frozen enough to support armored knights and their heavy equipment. The knights hunt the pagan defenders through the snow, treating the war as a chivalric exercise in the depths of the forest. This seasonal warfare turned the frontier into a site of constant, low-intensity conflict and logistical exhaustion. Why were the shaggy Sweek ponies essential to the survival of the Crusader armies in the wilderness? While the knights reserved their massive destriers for the charge, the indigenous Baltic horses performed the grueling labor of transporting fodder and supplies through the frozen terrain. The Teutonic Order relies on a ratio of nearly 3 Sweeks for every warhorse to ensure the army remains self-sufficient deep in hostile territory. These hardy animals are the biological backbone of the logistics network, carrying the weight of the crusade where heavier breeds would fail. This dependence on local resources underscored the reality that the invaders could not survive without the land they sought to conquer. How did the architecture of Marienburg manifest the permanence of the Teutonic Order after 1309? As the largest brick castle in the world, the Order's new capital serves as a masterpiece of Gothic engineering and a hub for maneuver warfare. Its massive walls and specialized killing zones, like the Zwinger, are designed to withstand any siege while housing the Grand Master's court. The construction of these brick monoliths required the clearing of entire forests, fundamentally altering the ecology of the region. This transition from wood to stone signaled the finality of the Crusader conquest and the birth of a new state. How did the theocratic state of the Teutonic Knights eventually succumb to the shifting tides of history? After the crushing defeat at the Battle of Grunwald in 1410, the Order's systematic control of the landscape begins to unravel into secular politics and administrative decline. The last Grand Master eventually removes his cross, declaring Prussia a duchy and ending the era of holy war with a legal document rather than a final charge. The deeper struggle with the papacy, the rise of Hanseatic commerce, and the legends of the Great Wilderness will be the subject of another episode. Which next chapter of the Baltic frontier should we explore together? If this deep dive into the clash of faiths helped you understand the birth of Northern Europe, please subscribe using the QR code visible on your screen. Your support allows us to continue unearthing the mechanisms of history and the stories of those who forged our world in the mud and the ice. Scan the code now to join our community and never miss a cinematic journey into the past.